The chandeliers of the Grand Astoria ballroom dripped light like liquid diamonds, splashing across a sea of tailored suits and couture gowns. It was a glittering shark tank, a place where smiles concealed predatory intent, and the currency was influence, not money. Alara Vance stood at the periphery, a ghost in a simple, elegant navy dress. Holding a glass of sparkling water, she had no intention of drinking. She was an observer by nature and by necessity, a student of the subtle shifts in power that rippled through a room like this. Tonight, however, she was the specimen under the microscope. The Vanguard Innovators Grant was a minor professional achievement, a footnote in a career she was painstakingly trying to rebuild from ash. But it was a public footnote, and, in this world, that was all that mattered. The presenter droned on, a symphony of platitudes that washed over her without purchase. She smiled on cue, nodded at the appropriate moments, her composure a carefully constructed fortress. Then, the presenter introduced the evening's keynote speaker, and the air in the room seemed to thin, growing colder. Julian Croft. He ascended the stage with the fluid grace of a man who owned every room he entered. His suit was a whisper of bespoke perfection, his smile a carefully calibrated weapon of disarming charisma. To the world, he was a titan of industry, a visionary philanthropist, the charismatic face of Croftwell Industries. To Alara, he was the architect of her ruin. "Good evening." Julian's voice, smooth as polished onyx, filled the cavernous space. He spoke of progress, of innovation, of the bright future they were all building together. His eyes scanned the audience, and, for a heart-stopping second, they locked with Alara's. A flicker of something ancient and cold passed between them before his public mask snapped back into place. He gestured towards the table where the evening's honorees sat. "We are here tonight to celebrate the future," he said, his smile widening, "and to honor those who have the courage to build it. People like tonight's grant recipient, Alara Vance." A polite smattering of applause followed. Alara inclined her head, the perfect picture of humble gratitude. "We all admire Alara," Julian continued, his tone shifting almost imperceptibly, becoming laced with a silken, venomous pity. "We admire her resilience." The word hung in the air, weighted with a history only a handful of people in the room understood. To the outsiders, it was a compliment. To the insiders, the ones who remembered, it was a stiletto blade, slid expertly between her ribs. Not many could rebuild a career after such a spectacular setback. He went on, the coded language painting a masterpiece of public humiliation, the catastrophic collapse of the Nova Fund, a project that cost so many people their futures. It takes a unique kind of strength to move past a tragedy of that magnitude, a tragedy that, in weaker hands, might have destroyed more than just portfolios. The room was silent. The clinking of cutlery had stopped. He wasn't just reminding them of her failure. He was branding her with it, publicly insinuating she was responsible for the death that had followed. He was blaming her for Leo. He was doing it in a room full of the most influential figures in the country, ensuring her professional exile would be permanent. He was salting the earth of her career. Every eye was on her. They were waiting for her to crumble, to flush with anger, to show a crack in the facade. The weight of their collective gaze was a physical pressure, a force meant to crush her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. But on the surface, Alara Vance was a statue carved from ice. She held his gaze, her expression one of serene composure. Her lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. When the spotlight swung back to her, expecting a reaction, she simply raised her glass in a silent, graceful toast. "Thank you, Julian." The two words, mouthed silently across the glittering expanse, were not a surrender. They were a promise. In her unnerving calm, a question formed in the minds of those who were truly watching. Who was this woman? And what, precisely, was she capable of? The gala was not her execution. It was her declaration of war. The quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the small, two-bedroom apartment. It was a world away from the diamond-dusted opulence of the Astoria, a world of overdue bills and the persistent, faint scent of antiseptic from Lily's nebulizer. Alara stood in the doorway of her daughter's room, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. Lily, all of 8 years old, with her father's auburn hair and a spirit too bright for the shadows that haunted their lives. The soft wheeze in her breath was a constant, terrifying reminder of their precarity. Asthma. The doctors called it. A chronic condition, manageable with expensive medications and a stress-free environment. Two things Alara struggled to provide. Julian's words from the gala echoed in the quiet apartment. Sharp and cruel. Resilience. He had no idea. Resilience wasn't a choice. It was the grim necessity of a single mother, whose daughter's next breath depended on her ability to absorb blows and keep moving forward. The Nova Fund. It felt like a lifetime ago. It had been their brilliant, beautiful dream, hers, Julian's, and Leo's. A revolutionary green energy investment fund that promised to change the world. Leo Croft, Julian's younger brother, had been the visionary, a supernova of chaotic genius. Julian was the salesman, the charismatic frontman, and Alara had been the architect, the one who designed the complex financial structures to make the dream a reality. She had built the engine, but she had also insisted on the brakes, safeguards, risk management protocols, ethical firewalls. Julian had chafed against them, hungry for faster growth. Leo, swept up in his own brilliance, had been easily swayed. They had bypassed her protocols. They had gambled. And, when the volatile energy market had turned, the fund had imploded, not just spectacularly, but with the force of a detonated bomb. Investors lost everything. The media frenzy was merciless. And, in the wreckage, Leo, unable to face the failure and the public shame, had taken his own life. Julian, in his grief, had needed a villain. Alara, the cautious one, the one who had tried to slow them down, became the perfect scapegoat. He had used his family's immense power and influence to craft a narrative of her incompetence, her recklessness. She was publicly crucified, blacklisted from every major firm on the Eastern Seaboard. She had lost her career, her reputation, and the man she had once considered her closest friend. Now, years later, she worked as a mid-level risk analyst at a boutique firm, a position for which she was grotesquely overqualified. It was a humiliating step down, but it paid for Lily's medication. It kept them afloat. Barely. The next morning, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Alara Vance. The voice was gruff, impatient. "This is she." "Ben Carter, Financial Chronicle." Alara's posture stiffened. She knew the name. Carter was a bulldog, a journalist known for his tenacity and his distrust of the corporate elite. He had written some of the most scathing pieces about the Nova Fund collapse, though he had always stopped short of blaming her directly. "What can I do for you, Mr. Carter?" "I was at the Vanguard Gala last night," he said, getting straight to the point. "I saw Croft's little performance. That wasn't a tribute. That was a public execution." "I'm not sure what you mean," Alara replied, her voice cool and non-committal. "Cut the act. Vance, Julian Croft doesn't do anything without a reason. humiliating you like that. After all these years, he's making a move. Or he's afraid you're about to make one. Which is it? I'm a risk analyst at a small firm. Mr. Carter, I'm not making moves on anyone. I'm trying to pay my rent. There was a pause on the other end. I never bought the official story about Nova, he said, his tone softening slightly. The math never added up. The way you were so thoroughly and systematically erased from the industry, it felt personal. It felt like a Croft special. He hesitated. If you ever decide you want to talk, to set the record straight, you have my number. The call left her unsettled. Carter was a wild card, a potential ally, but also a potential danger. The press had been a key instrument in her destruction. She had no reason to trust them now. She saved his number but resolved to ignore it. She couldn't afford to provoke Julian. Lily's stability depended on her staying invisible. That afternoon, she was called into her boss's office. Mr. Abernathy, a kind but timid man, looked deeply uncomfortable. He wrung his hands, his eyes darting around the room, landing anywhere but on her. "Alara," he began, his voice strained. "There's no easy way to say this. We have to let you go." The floor seemed to drop out from beneath her. "What? Why?" "My performance reviews are excellent. I just landed the Belkin account." It's a conflict of interest," he stammered, reading from a memo on his desk. "It's been brought to our attention that your history with the Nova Fund poses a significant reputational risk, especially as we seek to secure a new round of funding." "Brought to your attention by whom?" Alara asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Abernathy wouldn't meet her eyes. "I can't disclose that, but the board was insistent. Your termination is effective immediately." She walked out of the office in a daze, clutching a cardboard box containing the remnants of her professional life. This was Julian's work. The gala hadn't been the end. It was the opening salvo. He wasn't just content with her exile. He wanted her completely destroyed. She was halfway home when her phone rang again. It was Lily's school. The voice on the other end was cold, bureaucratic. "Am I speaking with Ms. Alara Vance, mother of Lily Vance?" "Yes. Is Lily all right?" A spike of pure adrenaline shot through her. "Your daughter is fine. Ms. Vance, I'm calling from the District Office of Child Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report expressing concern about your living situation." The world tilted on its axis. What kind of concern? Alara's voice was a hoarse whisper. "The report alleges financial instability, a potentially unsafe environment due to stress, and an inability to adequately provide for your daughter's medical needs. We'll need to schedule a home visit with a caseworker for tomorrow morning." The line went dead. Alara pulled the car over, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, the cardboard box on the passenger seat, a pathetic symbol of her failure. This was it, the direct attack. Julian wasn't just coming for her career anymore. He was coming for her daughter. He was trying to take the only thing she had left in the world. The quiet war she had been waging for years, a war of survival, of silent endurance, was over. A new war had just begun. Back in her apartment, the eviction notice taped to the door seemed like a quaint, manageable problem from a forgotten era. She stared at it for a long moment, then walked inside, her movements calm and deliberate. She sat at her small kitchen table, took a deep breath, and pulled out her phone. She found the number she had saved earlier that day. "Carter," he answered on the first ring. "Alara Vance," she said, her voice devoid of fear, replaced by something cold and hard as steel. "You wanted to talk. Let's talk." The diner was a relic, a pocket of the city untouched by time, smelling of stale coffee and fried bacon. It was anonymous, public, and perfect. Ben Carter slid into the booth opposite Alara, his face a roadmap of late nights and journalistic cynicism. He had the weary eyes of a man who had seen the worst of people and was rarely surprised. "He came after your kid," Ben said. Not as a question, but as a statement. That's his move. The anonymous CPS tip. It's untraceable, terrifying, and it puts you on the defensive. Classic Julian Croft. Alara's hands were wrapped around a mug of black coffee, the ceramic cold against her skin. "He wants to leave me with nothing, so I have no platform to fight back from." "So, fight back now. Give me the story, the real story of the Nova Fund." She shook her head. "My word against his. He's Julian Croft. I'm a disgraced analyst who just got fired and is being investigated by CPS. Who do you think they'll believe a story isn't enough? We need proof. Undeniable. Unimpeachable proof." Ben leaned back, studying her. The fear he had expected to see was absent. In its place was a focused, analytical calm that was far more intimidating. Proof of what financial misconduct old news? Proof of his intent. Alara said, proof that he knowingly and deliberately bypassed the risk protocols. Proof that he, not I, drove Nova into the ground. And proof that he orchestrated the cover-up that ruined my life and painted his brother's suicide as my fault. The first obstacle was immediate and immense. All official records from the Nova Fund were sealed under a mountain of litigation and non-disclosure agreements. Her old work files were gone, her access to the corporate servers revoked years ago. She reached out to former colleagues, people she had once considered friends. The calls were short. Voices were strained, full of apologies. No one would talk. They were too afraid of Julian's reach, of the professional consequences of being associated with her. She was a pariah, just as he had designed. "They're all scared," she told Ben over a secure messaging app. "He's built a wall of silence." "Then, we don't go through the wall. We dig under it." Ben replied, "You're the analyst. Analyze him. Now. What's Croftwell Industries working on?" Alara spent the next 3 days in a caffeine-fueled haze, poring over every public filing, every shareholder report, every press release from Croftwell Industries. She knew how Julian thought, his appetite for risk, his obsession with public perception. It was like reading the diary of her mortal enemy. On the 4th day, she found it, a tiny thread. "It's a subsidiary," she explained to Ben, pointing at a line on her laptop screen. "A shell corporation called Helios Renewables. It's buried in their Q3 filings, according to the paperwork. It's a dormant company holding a few minor solar patents. But the capitalization is all wrong. They've funneled nearly $50 million into it over the last 6 months. For a dormant company, it's burning through cash." "What for?" "I don't know, but it's being hidden. And Julian never hides things unless he has a reason." The investigation required a different kind of expertise. Alara made a call she hadn't made in 5 years. "Anya. It's Alara." Anya Sharma had been the brilliant, rebellious head of IT security at the Nova Fund, a prodigy who saw firewalls as suggestions and encryption as a personal challenge. After the collapse, she had vanished into the lucrative world of freelance cybersecurity, her loyalty to Alara unwavering. "I was wondering when you'd call." Anya's voice crackled through the phone. "I saw what he did at the gala. You ready to burn him to the ground? I need you to look into a company, Helios Renewables. I need to know what's behind the curtain." Anya's response was a low chuckle. "Consider the curtain torn." While Anya worked her digital magic, Julian's silent pressure intensified. A sleek black town car would be parked across the street from Lily's school at pickup time. staying just long enough to be noticed before pulling away. Her new job applications were met with instant rejections. The CPS caseworker, a tired but not unkind woman, conducted her home visit, her questions probing and invasive. Ilara answered every one with unshakable poise. The apartment spotless, the fridge full, Lily's medical records perfectly organized. She was performing the role of a perfect mother, knowing one slip could cost her everything. One evening, she returned home to find her laptop on her desk, wiped clean. Every file, every piece of her Croftwell research, was gone. It was a digital assassination, a warning shot. There was no explicit threat, just the cold, silent demonstration of his power. He could reach into her home, into her life, at any time. She called Anya, her voice tight with fury. He wiped my laptop. Cute, Anya said. Unimpressed. He's getting sloppy. I'm already past his primary firewalls. He's running a ghost server, heavily encrypted, routed through a dozen offshore proxies. That's where the real action for Helios is. He's building something big. Ilara. And he's using the same back-channel financial architecture he used in the final days of Nova. Can you get in? Does a black hole have gravity? Give me 24 hours. The next evening, Anya sent a single, encrypted file. It contained no financial data. It was a folder of old, corrupted project files, salvaged from a server that was supposed to have been wiped clean years ago. The project name was Phoenix. It was the original code name for the Nova Fund. Ilara worked through the night, painstakingly restoring the fragmented data. Most of it was useless old marketing plans, early drafts of press releases. But then she found it, a subfolder labeled LC, private, Leo's initials. Inside was a password-protected audio file. The password hint was a single question. Our first summit. Ilara's breath caught. She remembered the day vividly. A celebratory hike after they secured their first round of funding. She, Julian, and Leo, standing on the peak of Mount Greylock, feeling like they were on top of the world. She typed the word Greylock. The file opened. It wasn't a business recording. It was a voice memo from Leo, made in the frantic, final hours before the Nova Fund collapsed. His voice was ragged, terrified. He won't listen. Ilara, Leo's voice pleaded from the grave. I told him the models are breaking down. The market's turning. We have to trigger the circuit breakers. Unwind the positions like you designed. He said brakes are for cowards. He's doubling down. He's using the emergency capital reserves. He's going to break everything. It was never about the green energy. Was it? It was always just about him winning. It was the proof she needed. A voice from the dead, confirming that Julian had deliberately overridden the safety protocols. It was a start, but as she scrolled further, she found something else, something that made the blood drain from her face. It was a collection of early business plans, correspondence, and legal documents from before Nova was even a concept. It was from their very first venture, a small tech startup they had tried to launch in college. Ilara had forgotten it even existed, and attached to the documents was a scan of a death certificate. The name on the certificate was not Leo Croft. It was Daniel Croft. Ilara stared, her mind struggling to connect the pieces. She had never heard of a Daniel Croft. The date of death was 15 years ago. The cause was listed as a complication from a congenital heart defect. Then she saw the age, 19, and below it, the name of the signatory, the next of kin, Julian Croft. Anya, working from her end, had cross-referenced the name. I found him, she messaged, her tone uncharacteristically somber. Daniel was Julian and Leo's youngest brother. The family kept him out of the public eye. Severe health issues from birth. Died in a private hospital in Switzerland. "Why is his death certificate attached to our first business plan?" Alara typed back, her fingers trembling. Anya sent another file. It was a series of leaked hospital emails. That first startup. Anya wrote, "The money you raised. It wasn't for the company. Julian funneled it all to pay for an experimental, off-the-books treatment for Daniel. The venture was a front. When the treatment failed and Daniel died, the startup failed too. Julian told everyone, including Leo, that you mismanaged the funds." The pieces of the puzzle slammed into place with sickening force. It had never been about the Nova Fund. It had never been just about the money or Leo's death. This was a vendetta. 15 years in the making. Julian didn't just blame her for Leo. He blamed her for Daniel. In his twisted, grief-stricken mind. The failure of their first venture, a failure he had engineered to hide his own desperate gamble, had cost his youngest brother his life. And he had been waiting, patiently, for the perfect moment to make her pay for it all. This wasn't a business dispute. It was a blood feud. And Alara now understood that Julian Croft would not stop until one of them was utterly destroyed. The revelation of Julian's true motivation shifted the battlefield. Alara was no longer fighting the ghost of a business failure. She was fighting the specter of a deeply personal, 15-year-old tragedy. Julian's obsession, his need to destroy her, now made a terrifying kind of sense. He wasn't just a corporate predator. He was a man hollowed out by grief and consumed by a narrative of blame he had constructed to survive it. This knowledge was both a weapon and a vulnerability. She now understood his weak point, his fractured, buried past. Helios Renewables, Alara said to Ben and Anya over a secure conference call. "It's not just a new venture, it's a resurrection. He's trying to rebuild what Nova was supposed to be. But this time on his own terms. No partners, no one to question him. It's his way of proving he was right all along, of vindicating himself in the shadow of Leo's death." Anya confirmed it. The tech he's acquiring, the patents, it's all next-generation energy storage. It's Nova 2.0. And he's funding it through a complex web of offshore accounts. The same ones he used to hide the cash burn at Nova right before the end. Alara's new strategy was targeted. She wasn't just looking for proof of past crimes. She was looking for the active, ongoing fraud in the present. If she could prove that Croftwell Industries was using shareholder money to fund a secret, high-risk venture while lying about it in their public filings, she could trigger an SEC investigation that would bring the whole house of cards down. Armed with this new purpose, she began methodically tracing the money. It was her native language, the flow of capital as intuitive to her as syntax. With Anya's help, she peeled back the layers of shell corporations and encrypted ledgers. They were getting closer. The digital trail was faint, but it was there. Julian, sensing the shift in her tactics, escalated his attacks. The subtle intimidation was replaced by overt aggression, aimed squarely at her emotional vulnerabilities. He couldn't touch her legally or financially without drawing attention to himself. So, he attacked her support system. Ben Carter was the first to fall. A story appeared in a rival newspaper. A meticulously crafted piece of character assassination. It used out-of-context quotes and fabricated sources to paint Ben as a reckless journalist with a history of unethical behavior, culminating in the accusation that he was harassing a vulnerable single mother, Alara, to fabricate a story against a respected philanthropist. A deep-fake audio recording, convincingly mimicking Ben's voice, was leaked, in which he appeared to be offering Alara money for her story. His editor had no choice. Ben was suspended indefinitely. Pending an investigation, her most crucial ally was neutralized, his credibility shattered. "It's my fault," Ben, Alara said, her voice heavy with guilt, during a clandestine meeting in a deserted park. Don't, he said, his face grim. This is what he does. He isolates his targets. Don't let it work. You're close. Alara, I can feel it. Now you have to finish this for both of us. Next, Julian went after her history. He found Marcus Thorne. Thorne had been their first major investor in the Nova Fund, a respected, semi-retired venture capitalist who had served as a mentor to Alara. He was a man of unimpeachable integrity, and his early backing had been the key to their initial legitimacy. Julian arranged a meeting with him, a quiet, civilized affair in a private club that felt more like a glacier of polished mahogany and silent judgment than a room. Under the guise of concern, Julian painted a picture of Alara as unstable, obsessed, and dangerous, subtly reminding Thorne of the reputational damage he could suffer if a new scandal erupted. Thorne called Alara afterward, his voice full of a pained, paternal worry. Alara, maybe it's time to let this go. For your sake. And for your daughter's. What's done is done. You have a new life. Don't let him drag you back into the past. The conversation was a blow. Thorne wasn't just an investor. He had been a father figure. To hear him counsel retreat felt like a profound betrayal. She felt utterly alone. This was her lowest point. Ben was sidelined. Thorne had abandoned her. The walls were closing in. The fear for Lily was a constant, gnawing presence. Every time the phone rang, she expected it to be CPS again, with a new, more serious allegation. She looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the war being waged around her, and the thought of surrender was a sweet, seductive poison. Maybe Thorne was right. Maybe it was time to run, to disappear, to simply give up and survive. She was packing a bag, a desperate, half-formed plan to take Lily and leave the city, when an encrypted message from Anya appeared on her screen. Got it. The smoking gun. It's a server based in the Cayman Islands. The final piece of the puzzle. It holds the unredacted transaction logs between Croftwell and Helios. But there's a problem. It's air-gapped. The only way to access it is with a physical key, a specific encrypted hard drive. And I know where it is. Anya sent a satellite image. It was a picture of Julian's penthouse apartment. He keeps it in a safe in his home office. The ultimate in paranoid security. The thought was insane. Impossible. But as Alara looked at the packed bag on her bed, at the life of running and hiding it represented, she knew there was no other choice. Surrender was a temporary peace. Julian would never stop hunting her. The only way to be free was to win. How do we get it? Alara typed. We don't, Anya replied. You do. There's a Croftwell Industries emergency shareholder meeting tomorrow morning. He's announcing the acquisition of a major European tech firm. It's the final move to make his company untouchable, to legitimize the very technology he's been funding through Helios. While he's at that meeting, his penthouse will be empty. I can disable the security for a 7-minute window. You get in, you get the drive, you get out. Alara's blood ran cold. It was a heist. It was a suicide mission. But it was also the only path forward. And then Anya sent one last message, a message that changed the plan completely. New intel. The drive isn't the only thing in that safe. There's a second item, a burner phone. Leo's burner phone. Julian kept it. Leo's phone, the one he used in his final days, separate from his company device, whatever was on it. Julian had felt the need to hide it away in his most secure location. It was more than a smoking gun. It was the heart of the entire tragedy. Alara looked at the announcement for the shareholder meeting on her screen. It was being held at the Astoria Hotel, The very same ballroom where Julian had publicly humiliated her. The plan shifted in her mind. She wasn't going to break into his home. She was going to walk back into the shark tank. Change of plans. Anya, she typed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm not going to his apartment. I'm going to the meeting. And I'm going to need you to give me control of the screens. The air in the Astoria ballroom was electric with anticipation, thick with the scent of money and power. The glare of news cameras was blinding. The frantic whispers of analysts and investors, a low, constant hum. On the stage, Julian Croft stood at a podium, the picture of triumph. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the Croftwell Industries logo above a countdown clock, ticking down the final seconds to the official announcement of the merger that would solidify his empire, making him legally and financially invincible. Alara Vance slipped through a side door, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She wore a simple, dark gray suit, the uniform of the invisible support staff she was pretending to be. A press pass, secured by a now rogue Ben Carter, who had called in his last favor, hung around her neck. She was a ghost at the feast, and no one paid her any mind. And so, this acquisition marks a new dawn for Croftwell, Julian was saying, his voice resonating with practiced confidence. A future built on innovation, integrity, and relentless forward progress. Alara moved along the back wall, her eyes fixed on the stage. Anya's voice was a whisper in her ear through a tiny, flesh-colored bud. Stage left control panel. It's networked. I'm in. You have a go. I can override the presentation feed on your command. The countdown clock hit 0. The Croftwell logo dissolved, replaced by a digital signing page for the merger. Julian picked up a stylus, a triumphant smile playing on his lips, ready to sign his name and seal his victory. Now, Alara breathed into the tiny mic on her lapel. She stepped out from the shadows and began walking, not running, toward the stage. Her pace was deliberate, her posture radiating an unnerving calm that cut through the celebratory atmosphere. A few heads turned, then a few more. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Security guards, stationed at the edges of the stage, started moving toward her, their expressions hardening. On the screen, behind Julian, the digital signing page flickered and died. It was replaced by a single, grainy image, a photo of 3 young, smiling faces on a mountaintop, a young Alara, a charismatic Julian, and a bright-eyed, vibrant Leo Croft. Julian froze, stylus hovering over the screen. He turned, saw the image, and then saw her. Now halfway to the stage, a flash of pure, unadulterated shock crossed his face, quickly replaced by a cold fury. "Stop her," he hissed to his security team. But it was too late. Alara was at the steps of the stage, on the screen. The image was replaced by the first document, an internal Nova Fund memo, written by Alara, formally warning against leveraging the emergency capital reserves. It was dated the day before the collapse. "My name is Alara Vance," she said, her voice amplified by the podium mic she had snatched. It was clear, steady, and carried to every corner of the silent, cavernous room. "For 5 years, Julian Croft has told the world that I was responsible for the collapse of the Nova Fund and for the tragedy that followed." The screen changed again. The audio file from Leo's voice memo began to play, his panicked voice filling the ballroom. "He won't listen. Alara. He said breaks are for cowards. He's doubling down." Gasps rippled through the audience. Julian's face was a mask of white-hot rage. This is a lie slander from a disgruntled former employee. Alara ignored him, her focus absolute. Julian Croft didn't just ignore my warnings. He actively and deliberately drove the fund into the ground. And this is why. The screen shifted to the documents from their first startup. The one created to fund the experimental treatment for his brother, Daniel. The financial records showing the siphoned funds. The death certificate. He has blamed me for the death of two of his brothers, Alara stated, her voice resonating with cold, hard truth. But the first tragedy was his own secret, and the second was the direct result of his own reckless greed. The evidence was overwhelming. A digital onslaught of buried truths. The transaction logs Anya had uncovered, showing the illegal funneling of Croftwell shareholder funds into the secret Helios project. Emails from Julian instructing his team to scrub servers and initiate the smear campaign against her. He is not a visionary, Alara declared, her eyes locked on his. He is a fraud, and the empire he has built is founded on a lie. She had one final piece of evidence. The ace. Anya had done the impossible and, through a series of complex hacks, had retrieved the last item from the burner phone in Julian's safe, Leo's final, unsent voice message. It was a suicide note, a confession, and a condemnation. Anya, play the final file, Alara whispered. As the file prepared to load, a new document flashed on the screen by mistake, an ancillary file Anya had pulled along with the voice message. It was a scanned letter. A letter from Marcus Thorne to Julian's father, written a week after the Nova collapse. Alara's blood ran cold as she read the first line on the screen. Visible to the entire world, I have spoken to Alara. She suspects nothing. The truth about your involvement and my role in the cover-up is safe. The secondary twist. Her mentor, the man she had looked up to, hadn't just been pressured by Julian. He had been an active participant in the original cover-up, helping the Croft family bury the truth to protect their name. The full, unredacted voice message from Leo would not only destroy Julian, it would implicate Marcus Thorne, exposing him as a coward and a liar, ruining the old man's life and legacy. For a split second, Alara hesitated. The audience was a blur. The cameras were vultures, and on stage, Julian Croft stood trapped, exposed, waiting for the final blow. She had a choice: total, annihilating victory, or a victory tempered by a sliver of mercy. She thought of Thorne, a weak man who had made a terrible choice out of misguided loyalty, not malice. Destroying him felt like a different kind of crime. Her character was who she was when everything depended on choosing wrong. Stop the final file, she commanded Anya, her voice a low murmur. She looked at Julian, a strange, hollow pity replacing her anger. The evidence she had already shown was more than enough. The rest was just cruelty. As if on cue, the ballroom doors burst open, and federal agents streamed into the room, their dark suits a stark contrast to the glittering crowd. The merger was dead. The lie was exposed. Julian didn't run. He simply stood there, a king on a crumbling stage, staring at the woman who had dismantled his world. Not with a bomb, but with the truth. The aftermath was a storm. News reports played on a loop, a chaotic montage of Julian Croft in handcuffs, his face a stony mask, of Croftwell Industries' stock price plummeting into oblivion, of stunned financial analysts trying to explain the scale of the fraud. The merger was canceled. Croftwell's board resigned in disgrace, and the SEC launched an investigation that promised to be one of the largest in corporate history. Ben Carter, reinstated and instantly famous, wrote the story of his career, a brilliant, scathing exposé that laid bare the entire sordid history of the Croft dynasty. His name was cleared, his reputation not just restored, but forged in the fire of a story that had rocked the financial world. Ilara watched it all from the quiet sanctuary of her apartment. The world she had fought was now celebrating her as a hero, a whistleblower, a symbol of integrity. The calls were endless from news networks, from publishers offering book deals, from law firms seeking her expertise. She ignored them all. Her only important conversation was with Lily, who was sitting on the floor, building a complex tower of blocks. "Is the man who made you lose your job in trouble?" Mama Lily asked, her 8-year-old mind processing the fragments she had overheard. Ilara knelt beside her, her voice soft. "Yes, honey. He is. He won't be bothering us anymore." "Good," Lily said with simple finality, placing another block on her tower. "He wasn't very nice." A few days later, she met with Marcus Thorne. They sat in a quiet corner of a park, the silence between them heavy with unspoken truths. The letter that had flashed on the screen had been seen by hundreds, but, in the ensuing chaos, its significance had been lost to all but her. "I saw the letter, Marcus," Ilara said simply, not with accusation, but with a quiet sadness. The old man flinched. He looked ancient, his face etched with a shame that was more painful than any public humiliation. "I was a coward," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Julian's father. He was my oldest friend. He begged me to help them contain it, to protect the family name, to protect what was left of Julian after he lost both his brothers. I told myself I was doing it for him, but I was just afraid. I am so sorry. Ilara." She looked at the man who had been her mentor, who had failed her so profoundly, and felt only a deep, weary empathy. "I know," she said. And in that moment, she chose to let it go. Her war was with Julian. The rest was just collateral damage. In the weeks that followed, the legal process churned on. Victims of the Nova Fund collapse, energized by the new evidence, launched a class action lawsuit. A portion of Croft's frozen assets was designated for a victims' restitution fund. As the architect of the fund's original, untainted structure and a victim of the subsequent fraud, Ilara was named a primary beneficiary. The money was staggering. It was enough to ensure that she and Lily would be secure for the rest of their lives. But as she looked at the numbers on the page, she felt no triumph, only a profound emptiness. She had won. She had her revenge. But the world she had fought to expose was still broken. 1 year later, Ilara stood on a windswept plot of land overlooking the bay. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The site was barren, marked only by the crumbling foundation of a building that had never been completed. It was the place where the first Nova Fund project, a revolutionary solar-to-hydrogen conversion plant, was supposed to have been built. It was a graveyard of dreams. A small crowd was gathered: journalists, community leaders, young, hopeful entrepreneurs. Ben Carter stood at the front, his notebook in hand, a genuine smile on his face. Anya was there, wearing a sharp suit and looking uncharacteristically formal, in the front row. Lily sat beside Marcus Thorne, who watched Ilara with eyes full of quiet, humble pride. Ilara stepped up to a simple podium. She was not the same woman who had been publicly humiliated in a glittering ballroom. The icy composure had been replaced by a warm, quiet strength. She had fought her war, and, in winning, had discovered that victory was not an end, but a beginning. "This place was once a symbol of failure," she began, her voice clear and steady. "A symbol of a good idea corrupted by greed and ego. Today, we are reclaiming it. Today, this ground becomes a symbol of a second chance." She announced the launch of the Leo Vance Foundation. She had combined her own name with Leo's, honoring the brilliant, flawed boy whose vision had been the seed of it all. Using the restitution funds she had received, she had created a new kind of venture capital firm, one dedicated to supporting ethical, sustainable, and socially responsible tech entrepreneurs. Our mission is simple, she explained. We will provide not just the capital, but the mentorship and the ethical framework to ensure that brilliant ideas are never again destroyed by a lack of integrity. We will invest in character as much as we invest in code. We will build the brakes as well as the engines. It was the ultimate act of empowerment. She was not just tearing down a corrupt world. She was building a new one in its place. She was taking the ashes of her past and using them to fertilize the future. She had moved beyond revenge and into the realm of rebirth. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, a courier delivered a small, hand-addressed envelope to her. She opened it in the quiet of her new office, a bright, airy space overlooking the Foundation's first construction site. The letter was written on elegant, heavy stationery, the handwriting a refined, slightly trembling script. It was from Julian and Leo's mother. Alara braced herself for a final wave of anger, of blame. But the words on the page were something else entirely. Dear Ms. Vance, I am writing to you not as the mother of the man who wronged you, but as the mother of the boys he used to be. For years, I have lived in a prison of denial, watching Julian build an empire on the foundations of his own pain and grief. I was too weak to face the truth of what he had become, of the part our family's pride played in the tragedies that consumed my sons. You did what I could not. You held up a mirror, and you forced him, and the world, to see the truth. I do not know if my son can ever be redeemed, or if our family can ever truly heal, but I know that it could never have begun without the terrible, necessary light you shone upon our darkness. Thank you. Alara folded the letter, a final, unexpected layer of closure settling over her. Her actions had created ripples she could never have foreseen, bringing a strange and painful peace, even to the family of her enemy. She looked out the window at the construction site, where a new foundation was being laid, solid and true. Her work was just beginning.